Hello world, Naiji Coach here. Alrighty, so this is a special bonus vlogging. The plan had actually been to do more reading for a few days before I addressed some forum conversation that I wanted to get into. However, I don't think you can hear the background, but Jailene is doing awesome in getting things ready for us to be moving. And as a part of that, there's like the Z sound of the boxes being put together and the tape and everything. It's like, so that makes it a little tricky to read. And she's also doing some lovely singing in the background, which I love hearing in general, except when I'm trying to read, because I need like total concentration for that. Now, this doesn't mean I've lost my reading ability entirely, kind of like as a, enlightenment pulp hero that I am. No, what it actually is that this would be challenging. This would make things more challenging to read than, say, my baseline. But so I could probably still do some new reads on TV or something like that, perhaps. But what I'm really focused on right now is, okay. So you can see that let me lose my train of thought. And this is good because it's actually showing sort of what happens when I'm like zoning in on a case. There's like a loop that needs to kind of close till I go, aha. And if that slowly, kind of like a video game where you press in, you have to open up the loot or whatever from Assassin's Creed, right? You have to wait for the whole thing to go around. If you stop at any point before it completely closes, you have to start the whole loop over again. So right now, this is very challenging, the work I'm doing. I pulled about 2,000 samples. I think I'm getting close to having the ones I need pulled. There may be a few more, but you can check it out under the Attention tab in the Sample Surfer program. And they're challenging. They're ones that I find particularly challenging for a variety of reasons I'll get into in the weeks to come, but they're the ones I'm looking at right now. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get some of them, and I'm coming to terms with that. But in order for me to come to terms with that, me being me, Naiji Kensei, I'll need to actually have absolute focus so I can give my best attempt, and then I'll know, okay, at least for now, I'll have to come back. I've used all my abilities, I've got my things set up in the environment to maximize my ability, and it is what it is. So without that right now, I really can't go forward on the particular reads that my spirits are interested in. So I'm going to be answering some of these forum questions. All right. And the reason I'm doing this is, one, because it's productive, but also relevant in that the question being asked here is by Naiji Glenn, having to do with, say, Naiji and sometimes emotional instability. And there's a lot to that. But one thing is what I'm doing right now. It's an ongoing thing of having, like, say, Jailene singing, which, I love to hear, and I hope she does it now. It's wonderful. It's very inspiring in general for my life. However, it does block me from doing maximum focus reading as a feat. So realizing in the world that there's going to be things that are good and are supposed to be there, but as an Naiji, it'll make it difficult to do what you need to do, and that'll make you go inside, and that that can have a whole lot of variety to it, but it's all existential angst, and we have a lot of it as Naiji. Everyone has a heroic share of that. But as Naiji, there's a lot of energy that comes from the interaction between you and the world, and how it's tricky to get it set the way you want. All right, so we're going to segue in here. I'll read this whole thing out. So I've been wondering as of late if it is normal for Naiji to undergo states of being emotionally stable versus emotionally unstable, and if this is related to Naiji being moody and their flex factor. Also, how can this be improved so that it becomes less of an issue? All right, so yes, there is that issue, but I like to think of it perhaps like how shape-shifting works, in that there is going to be the shifting in and out of forms, and you could say that being emotionally stable versus unstable are two different forms of being Naiji, and you need to do both, but the whole cycle is part of your peak pathway, therefore is under your control, and is how you assess and improve oneself. When you're thinking of yourself, it's not any of your individual shape-shifted forms or mood states. It is all of them, you know, I mean, your whole playlist, and as a DJ, how you play them. Okay. Like this. Okay, so this is why my spirit said do this, because this is healthy and helpful. That's those sounds. I'm telling myself, which is good training to do and to help my fifth gear, that these are sounds of a friend using abilities I don't have to do stuff I need to have happen, right? And so that allows me to get a part of that dealt with in a productive way. But then there's still some of the energy which is like, oh, it still makes me go, oh, with the tape. So this is critical. I must be able to separate out those two quantities. Often it can be more complicated elements than that, but we'll just say what's simple for right now is the amount that I'm able to go, this is good Z. This is good Z that's helping me, but I'm still feeling rattled. All right, so the fact that those are two different things. One is the friend doing a good thing for you, using abilities that are extremely helpful, versus in a perfect world. In a perfect world, this would all be organized so everyone had the sound insulation they needed and the times together and apart and all the stuff to make it perfect. But that's never going to be the way of it. There's always going to be some imperfections, even the closest to utopia you can get. That's why you can never have utopia. You can have near utopia. That's an ideal to go for. Near utopia, but actual utopia? No. It's not possible. Because there is always just competing energies, competing needs, and things like that. And so humans have to deal with that. As Naiji, you'll be in these kind of existential quandaries a bit more often, so you'll have to get quite adept at this. Which is tabling the part of me right now that's feeling aggressive. I do. There's an aggression, a need to dominate. I do feel the jarring that comes from that tape sound. It's kind of dominating me. Is Jailene dominating me? No, Jailene's helping me a great deal. And yet both those signals are coming from the same, what you heard again? It's sending me both those things. So I need to be able to recognize that, separate those two things out in my mind's eye, and then enjoy and pump up and really touch on the signal more consciously that this is helpful. This is the sound of me winning. I've got an awesome dear friend with abilities I don't have that she's very good at doing and helpful at doing that, and we're actually going to move up to a place that's better for us than here. And this concentration issue that is an issue right now, it's quieter up in Portland, so the sound pollution will be down, so I'm going to get an overall life bubble concentration upgrade from this. But right now, it actually means that it's putting me at a lower ceiling on what my read signal can do. So recognize, separate, then bring up the signal that is useful for right now, and the other energies, you have to go when, where, and when. Because there's two things in that. For example, right now it's not the right time for me to bring up my aggression, my need to dominate that tape. The sound that tape makes, I want to dominate it. I want to pin it. I want to choke it out. Rear naked choke. That tape sound as a thing that nature does. In nature, there's humans, and humans make tape, and tape makes that sound, and that's just a thing. That's just a thing. Just like people who I know they need to make the grass look nice and whatnot, but the sounds that activity makes. All right, anyway, but long story short, you can see that dilemma. So one, having a sense of humor helps. It helps to have a sense of humor because it's kind of absurd. Like it's an absurdist thing. It's funny. It really is. It's funny how such a empowering, endearing signal and such an irritating and an off-putting signal are coming from the same thing. But that happens, and it will not be a rare occurrence for me in life. I can try and control things, by the places I live, by the company I keep, by the subjects I work on. Things I can control certain things, the playlists I listen to, but there's some things you just can't control. So realize that's going to bring up intense need, because Naiji are the yinest of the yang, but we are yang, we are directed, so we want to be in control. So recognizing that, separating out the particulars of it, and using the right ones at the right time, meaning right now, like I said, aggression dominance, not appropriate, and it's a bit animal right now. It's a bit animal right now. My appreciation for her and what this sound means is not only more appropriate right now, it's more thought through, and therefore more correct. I've done this before. I'm used to doing this spell. I've kind of revisited where I've gone with that before. I connect to the spirit of my dear friend and what these sounds mean and go, that's the hustle and bustle of good things for you, good things for what you care about. So I can lean into these feelings right now because they're appropriate, both appropriate at time and place, and I actually could have these feelings that were not this well thought out, and I could go up to Jailene, I've done this before, and I could start pestering her while she's doing something productive for me about how the sound of it and what's going on. I can now see how this is helpful and blah, 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 and I'm really pumped up and yada, yada, which is great, and she likes that, except I'm interrupting her being productive. So even this thing here, which is a good thing, is because me doing it to the camera right now is useful. It's a good time as far as like kind of playing games like Assassin's Creed. There's certain levels and certain equipment that it's a good time to do a mission. Other times you can't do it, or if you could do it, not as smooth, not as bonus stacked as it could have been. So right now, all these things, including this noise like, are you fine little, but at the same time, I'm telling things I think are useful and interesting if you're bothering to watch this vlog, so you're getting two signals. And I wouldn't do this spell all the time, but since that is the subject of today's class, so to speak, it's actually useful to kind of get a little taste of that in this video itself. All right, so then where from there? Okay, so let's talk about the aggression, the dominance that comes up, is you want to kind of put it to the side, and as a part of that, really try to use a detachment when it is put to the side of not giving it a label. That's important because you're going to use these like little jukebox coins to get your simulator going so you can work on them. When you do that, you want the nuggets to be as clean as you can. If you put even like a little like, I'm putting this here because Jailene did such and such, it might put a little stink of something else like Jailene, or of the trip to leave, or packing up things in an efficient manner as a general principle. You know what I mean? I may be putting a stink on things that shouldn't be getting any stink when I put that aggression or dominance to one side. Know this, whatever, see, there'll be no shortage of power. So whatever happens to be, you'll have all the power you need. You don't have to start steering the aggression or dominance yet, not until you actually know where it needs to be going. That's important. One good thing, and also something you have to watch out for as an IG, when you table these aggressions and dominant things, they'll stay there ready to be tapped again, and when they do, they will come sprung up with very little loss of aggression or dominance. I mean, they can stay dormant for a long period of time, but then they come out fresh as a daisy often. That is a great power of Nai Nai Alpha in general, Nai Mojos really, but particularly the Nai Alpha, how the volume and ease at which we can sort of just, we're going to put it over here for now and just sort of pretend like that's not there, or just not touch it, turn our mind's eye back to it until we want to turn around and do it. But when you turn around, the reason why you tabled it is because it was potent, so you don't really have to worry about the potency. Sometimes there can be a need to feel like, ooh, I'm going to use this later to get somebody, or you could just do this, I'm going to use this later. It's a subtle difference, trust me. Spirit forming, it's an important difference. No tone, don't give a tone unless you know something. You want to make sure knowledge and wisdom are above pushing the toned behavior. All right, then when you go to look at it, I find the best way to do that in general for me is there's certain music or thematic topics that will bring this up. And as long as it's somewhat close, I can bring it again. So for example, like right now, I'm feeling some aggression and dominance that I am putting to the side. I'm not sublimating, like stuffing it. I'm putting it over here, like as a kind of a spellcaster. I get spell point energy. The upside is I have powers to create spells. The, not say downside, but the cautionary aspect is that I will be building up armament. I will be. I'm a directive. I'm going to be building up armament with my momentum powers. And so I'll need to do something with that armament at some point, or the armament will start to boss me around with its need to fire on something. Alright, so knowing that I need to do it, I'll go in there and I will bring it out. And I'll have often my daily rant sessions, and I will listen to music that, for example, I'll kind of touch on these other things. In this case, there's a lot more to it than aggression and dominance. It's a whole, as an IG, I can do a whole, existential, infinite cupboard of, pantry items of these things to be used when needed. But in this case, we're talking about the dominance and aggression, which is a big one because that can be more tricky for an IG to engage in the world on a regular basis than it is for the other directives. So when you go to touch that energy, you're going to listen to something that will wiggle the jars. You kind of little jars of spirits that want to be let out. These are just spirits of something, and you don't know what it is yet. That's something too. I'll get a little high level here, but basically, as part of like putting the tone, but don't do that. Just let it be potent, and you'll touch the potency when it's time to take it further. That's important because it's a spirit. It's a spirit in a way. So we can think of it as unused, emotional or psychological energies, but also it's spirits. It's a spirit of something. So we want to make sure we get the naming process correctly. As a part of that, when you feel certain things build up, you can reach for them with your mind's eye and kind of just let them be. Go to a state of equanimity like you would do for mojo reading. That's why mojo reading is such a great weapon, kind of like Jedis with their swords. That's not the main thing of the Force, but it's a good thing to help one channel on, to begin one's association with the Force, or in this case, natural law. So you want to go to fifth gear and just be detached but very interested, right? You are aware that the jars want to release these built up jars of energy. So you allow which jars feel they are more prevalent. They will vie with each other, not vie's wrong word. They will contest with each other. They will try to figure out which comes up first based on how many jars of what kind of potencies. So you can use that fifth gear to feel that. Once you do that, you can then reach towards these jars of energy that want to be addressed and kind of feel what mood are they. And while in that state, go on the internet, for example, YouTube, whatever, and click on clips. It can be movie clips, music, poetry, current events of a certain kind of energetic slant, like certain vloggers, right, have a certain energy to them. And as you do it, you can feel those jars that you now have a connection to. Liking that or not, they'll rattle more or less. And then you basically start pinging that. This is kind of reading. This is spiritual reading. You're reading what the jars want. And then you'll let that energy come up through the playlisting. And then at some point, often, when the jars rattle enough, they'll kind of erupt and you'll sound off. Often you may sound off at the screen itself or walking around the room or whatever, and this is important. This is powerful. It's also something you need to do by yourself. You want to just let it go, because by doing that you'll actually see what it is you're talking about, what dragon you've unleashed, and now you can start steering it and grooming it and making it not just a raw beast of nature, but actually a servant of productive harmony, which, dragons are badass servants once they realize that is what they're supposed to be doing. But first it's like, that's what comes out first. All right, so when you do that, something may happen that may things a little weird. It's totally fine if it happens. In fact, it usually happens for me to some degree, unless I really know what it is the jars want. But if I don't really already kind of know what it is to a more heightened degree, what'll happen is I'll be listening to some music and the themes of the song will start to speak to me, and I'll kind of like react to it. to start, and I'll start kind of sounding off, but then I'll start to go to what the jars wanted to talk about, if it's close enough. If a current event story being told by a political commentator whose attitude is a certain similarity to the voice that the jars want to build in you, then you'll start to sound off, it'll come out raw, and that's good. And you can then see, this is too potent of a dissatisfaction to be given to most people in general. You want to, even if you're angry at someone, you won't want to do this. It's too raw. Even if you're trying to intimidate someone, you'd want to be a bit more under control, your dragon. You'd want to be able to steer that a bit more, be a bit more knowing, have better navigation of where this is all going. And as you are, wanting to have a more friendly approach, a softer, more deft touch, then you'll want to have this more so. Because otherwise what will happen is it'll jump out in other conversations, and that'll be the first time it comes out, and that's actually something that you don't want to have happen. Because the Nai is going to be leading here, there will be some emotional instability in that you really don't know what your code of conduct is, other than it wants to follow where the Nai wants to go. That is excellent, that is amazing, that is top of the food chain, specialized wise, for discovery. Not for interaction, not for sharing, not for communicating. So this is really kind of teaching you. In those stages, it's okay to become unstable in that you are becoming malleable to the learning process of what it is you want to be doing. Yeah, that's something that actually is best to be done. Going on, like, how this be improved so it becomes less of an issue, is realizing that this discovery process is something that you need to be doing on your own, and it's going to get gnarly to where you probably wouldn't want people listening to you. I've been doing this a very long time. I'm very, very good at it, and even now, I don't like anyone listening to me do it. Even Jailene, no one, not when I'm doing initial discovery. And the several layers after that are also going to be heavily laden with that discovery energy of just like, it is what it is. Okay, that's very powerful, but very safety. You have to be realize that's a weaponized thing. It is what it is. It is what it is. It is what it is. That energy gets really ramped up, and whatever I'm saying, whether I'm beating myself down or beating demons, or demons I believe to be for other people, or whatever demons of the world at large, demons of, I think, natural law, kind of give me a raw deal here, which is always a demon that disappears in the end. It's not really true. But point is, there can be all kinds of things that need to be dealt with. And the emotional instability is becoming what you need to be, so you are forging yourself. There's going to be a desire to actually forge others with you. For the company of not forging yourself alone, that's gnarly business. And also to feel powerful, to know that you are, what you chose to forge your soul with, they're choosing as well, validating your soul forging choices, which are beyond deeply personal in general to humans, but Naiji fixate on it. Their powers of Nai and Ji have a tendency of fixating on that kind of thing more than others. So that's important to understand. So I guess that's kind of the general thing. Recognize, separate out, use what's appropriate at the time. If you don't know what's appropriate, don't do anything if you can. And then things that you put into jars for later, try not to tone them when you put them to the side. When you pick them back up again, you can feel which ones should be getting more attention by just going fifth gear and allowing them to rise up to your hand. Then keep that connection while you do various media. Later on, this media can be replaced by conversations with actual people, but you don't want to do that at first. You'll want to do this in your own head for a while. And at some point, it'll build up enough that you'll want, this is critical. Yeah, the actual first ones will be in your head. You'll rant in your head. You'll sound off in your head. But then you'll want to voice. And there can be a strong desire to go from the in your head to the voice is with people. No, make sure that's at least third radial of this. Rant in your head, then rant out loud to yourself. Write letters to yourself. Write books to yourself. Write forum posts that you don't post to yourself. And then come back and look at it. You're always going to want to edit, and you'll be very glad you did. That doesn't mean, oh, it was crap then. No, it was raw, awesome, volcanic power, but that doesn't mean it knows what it's doing or that it's accurate or that it has been properly matured, so it's actually going to be useful. So, rant in the head, rant out loud, verbally, textually, whatever, but then don't send it to anyone. Make sure you do a lot of that so you know what it is, what conversation you're having, and then begin to bring in other people. As it is appropriate to having those conversations. And if you start feeling energy surge up, this whole process will make you more savvy about that. And you'll be aware, oh, I'm getting a surge. When you get that, you want to be very responsible. That is going to be your genius. That's going to be your courage. That's going to be your life force. It's also going to be what makes you and the world sometimes be adversarial. It's going to be what can actually hurt relationships with your friends. It's also what can actually have you going 1,000 miles an hour, almost where you're supposed to go, i.e. very far off the mark because you went harder and faster than you were ready for with the navigation. So, long story short, be very responsible with that energy. So when you feel it, go, what of it do I know? Separate that out. Do I use it now? Yes, no. Put it where it needs to go. The other stuff, I'm not sure what it is or if it's right for right now. So I'm going to note its existence and put it to the side and have a touch with it where I'm like, I'm going to revisit that. And then you revisit using the various ways, and then you process it in your head. If you don't process it to the point where you need to say it out loud, you need to write it down, a book that you may not show anyone, an email post you may not show anyone, do that. Write it, and then come back and evaluate it. And then move it forward to the next stage. So those are my initial thoughts. More questions from anyone are welcome, but I hope that helped. I think the advice I'm giving here is actually good for anyone to do. But particularly if you find yourself, whatever mojo you are, whatever design, of a particularly artistic, creative bent, you'll want to be aware of this process because those energies will surge up and they'll meet the world and they'll kind of have strong reactions. You need to be able to recognize, separate, compartmentalize, make sure you get back to it so you don't get flooded, and you do something with it by learning what it is and what it can be used for in a useful way. Very often, most of the time, the energies that I use to deal strongly in certain ways, they weren't originated in that encounter. I experienced certain encounters that I wasn't the right time to be using those dominant energies, for example, aggressive energies, and so I'm like, no. But then but I need to do that when it's right. And then I found, for example, a lot of times in normal conversation, I don't like to do the dominance thing like it's more standard, but in certain conversation things, philosophical points, for example, when I'm talking to people in that way, then it comes out because I feel, that's appropriate, and it can be channeled into things that I will be proud of afterwards. So because being so yin of the yang in this way, we need to kind of do our weaponizing first and then go, what is it? You'll want to actually do several test runs of what it is you think you're doing before really even bring it out of your own head to where you can hear it out loud. Then once you're doing that, do a lot of that before you move on to the next phase so that you actually are not surprised so much by the reactions that will be happened because you're going to be very sensitive to it, very sensitive to the reactions. You'll be very sensitive to when it goes from in your head to you saying it out loud. It'll kind of weird you out that you said things that were not really of your own volition. They were, but they're coming from higher places. And they are telling you. And so you'll be like, blah, 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 blah. And then you'll say stuff and you realize, oh, that's true, but you weren't planning on saying that. So that happens quite a bit. And then sometimes you say that and you're like, that's kind of true, but not actually. It felt like that was the answer when it was inside, but I needed to get it out. Once I got that out and looked at it, I'm like, oh no, actually the mark is a few degrees over this direction, those few degrees can be all the difference in the world in how a story goes, more positively or more negatively, as far as ongoing motifs. All right, there we go. Let me know if any questions are coming from this. Bye-bye.